Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Apollyon. I think it's a very interesting idea whenever you can play as the same character multiple days in a row, because I think it does demonstrate the difference on how just different your runs can be, even though you're essentially having the same game strategy to get through the game and try to get to the end. And I think with Apollyon that's even more apparent because his active item has more uses than just one. So if you're playing someone like Lilith, there's really not much ways you can go there, but if you're playing as someone's Apollyon, you can really kind of rely on your active items to suck up other active items and then just stack those effects on top of each other, and that can be really fun. Or maybe you can use your active items to suck up a lot of passive items and just get a lot of stats ups that way. And obviously a lot of that depends on which items you get through the run, or maybe just which other active items you get. So maybe you want to keep some, you maybe want to suck up some, or maybe your just general game strategy is different and your run can differ based on that. And that's a really neat concept for a character because he doesn't always play the same, and he does have some unique traits or personalities that I think do make him stand out a little bit from any other characters. But with that said, from how much I've played Apollyon, which isn't admittedly super a lot, but since he did show up a few times in these dailies, I do think that I have a good verdict on just how fun this character is for me. And I think in a majority of cases, he's not very good and he's not very fun. I do tend to find that often enough you just don't end up using the Void at all because there just aren't enough items to suck up, but more importantly, you do suck up those passive items more often than the active items. I think that the power of the Void really lies in just essentially converting really bad items into stats, which happen to be, or at least in most cases, are a damage up or a tears up, and that's obviously very good because you get a DBS upgrade. So all of those reasons is what makes Apollyon a strong character, but that's not necessarily what makes him an interesting or a fun character to play as. Even when you do get an opportunity to sack up active items, I do find that a lot of that just happens to be with items that you find in the library, because the library is not usually, but whenever you find it, it tends to have a lot of books inside, and instead of having to go through spikes or through keys, it's just much easier to press that spacebar button and consume all 5 or 4 or however many books there are into one active item. And of course, that's a very exciting thing when it happens, but just because of how frequently it happens whenever you're playing as Apollyon, because maybe that's the best way of getting active items, or maybe the most common, a lot of runs do tend to be a bit samey. Of course, when you do get a really good run going and when you really can kind of spiral out of control and just suck up a ton of different items, then it can get really fun and you can start doing some really crazy things. I always enjoy getting something like restock and just buying things in the shop until essentially you run out of money, and then you just press the spacebar item or use the black rune or whatever to suck up all of those items and just make them disappear. That's always one of the most rewarding and interesting experiences that I think you can have with Apollyon, and I do wish that it would happen more often. Maybe a way to alleviate that, or maybe to fix that, would be to add a new trinket, which would remove or at least decrease the chance of getting passive items and increase the chance of getting active items. So similar to something like the no trinket, just in the reverse. And although that would be a really bad trinket in most cases, like with many trinkets, I think they do have a situational use, and it would be an interesting whenever you could get that combo of Apollyon and an active item, just because I think you could really pour all of that power into the Void and you would just press it and just essentially kill everything. Obviously, another usage of the Void, which I think is a bit more interesting, but doesn't happen often, is just reducing the initial charge of the item. So in this case, there are only 2 items which have more charges than 6, and I believe that's the Mega Blast, and the other one is Delirium or something like that. And essentially those get reduced to 6, and you also get the benefit of whenever you pick up the battery charge, it fills it up back to full instead of just getting 3 charges like you get with those 2 other items. And that makes it for a very fun experience. When you have a Mega Blast on 6 charges, you can just essentially go through rooms and just keep using it, and it's an infinite usage type of situation. And you can also use it in Boss Rush and Against Harsh and all of that, and that makes it for a really interesting experience. And I think that because it does happen rather rarely, or just because you don't play as Apollyon every time, you don't get the Void as every time, and obviously Mega Blast is already really, really rare. When it does happen, it's a really interesting concept, and that's something that I feel like really shines whenever you're playing as Apollyon. But in majority of cases, he's not as fun to play, and he doesn't really have any unique personality traits. For example, as someone like Judas might. Judas is that type of thing which I feel, I just mentioned Judas because this is the first name I remembered, but he makes it special because he always starts with 1 health, and you're always in this position where you have to get through the early rooms not yet hit and then survive so you can start getting stronger. And if you do get best in that initial hump, what you'll be rewarded is a very strong run usually, and a very powerful one with a lot of damage. And I think that's what makes other characters maybe a bit more personable, or at least have more personality than Apollyon has. But that's not necessarily wrong, because this is supposed to be a character that just relies on the Void to showcase it, and I think the Void is an interesting enough item that it warrants its own character slot essentially, because I think it does make for some very niche uses sometimes. But enough about the Void, enough about those items. I need to talk about the run, because something really crazy happened at some points in this game, and you can see that I have quite a lot of going here. But the first, what started all of this chaos conundrum that I got all of these items which I usually wouldn't pick up was anti-gravity tears, and usually those tears are something I wouldn't pick up, but just because I had 2 breaking runs, I was playing kind of seriously for the past 3 or 4 days, I decided I'm gonna have a little bit of fun, I'm gonna pick it up, I'm gonna try to make it work. It worked okay for the first 2 floors, maybe first 3, I don't really remember, until I found Dr. Fetus, and I just decided to pick it up. Maybe it synergizes in some way, of course, it doesn't synergize, I wasn't that surprised by that, but it still had some neat effects to it, and it did reduce my tear delay, so I was able to shoot my bombs rather fast. And later on, or maybe even previous to that, I found Chaos. So that means that whenever you pick up Chaos, there's just a higher chance of you finding bob items. And because I found Dr. Fetus later, I decided I'm gonna pick up Dr. Fetus, and that's gonna make for a very interesting round, hopefully. And that's exactly what happened. I got Dr. Fetus, I got a ton of bomb items, I got scatter bombs, sad bombs, poison bombs, sticky bombs, fast bombs, homing bombs later on, essentially all of the bob items. And whenever you can shoot them out with your Dr. Fetus shot, so you're not actually using your bombs, it does turn out in this very fun cluster of just explosions, just killing every enemy and just going ham, and just, it's a really fun experience. And you can see, especially later on, once I use my Algiz rune or maybe any type of shield, I'm invincible, and I can start really spamming those shots, just how powerful this run is. And of course, everybody knows that using one sad bomb is already strong enough, but imagine a sad bomb which splits into 5 more sad bombs, and all of those deal passive damage with the poop bombs, and then because of that they're all poison and then shoot shots, and they're all enhanced with a lump of coal, and it's just a crazy situation. You can see here how fast just the Harsh died when I popped my Algiz. I was able to surround him with bombs and explosions, and he just managed to die early. And sadly, that success didn't translate that well early on into the game, because I managed to beat boss rush. And if you were paying attention, I actually made a very silly mistake. So I thought I'm gonna make it, and I think I would have been able to make it if I was just a bit ballsier, so if I just went in there and really tried to do a lot of damage with my orbital. But sadly, I think I missed 1 or 2 opportunities to do that, and I just ran out of time in the nick of time. I just ran out of the counter, so I wasn't actually able to make it to boss rush. I teleported out with the moon card, and then I had an idea to try to reroll or buy as many items with restock until I would find Mama Mega. And of course, I kept doing that, and I kept doing that, and Mama Mega did show up, surprisingly to me. But of course, because I already explored the floor, I used it, but the boss rush didn't open, which means I really couldn't do it again. So that was a huge blunder on my part, and I was thinking maybe there was something else I could have done. I know I found a forget-me-not, I definitely should have stuck with that. I'm not really sure why I didn't pick it up, but then again, because I used it in the past 3 dailies, I think I just thought that I wouldn't go that route again. I want to break the game necessarily, and I feel like that might not be that fun. I had a really strong and a really fun run going on here. I'll try not to ruin this experience by trying to break the game, or maybe finagle and optimize whatever I'm doing, because that's really gonna take a lot of enjoyment out of it, at least for me, and probably for you too who's watching. I think sometimes you just need a break and just need a non-constructive daily, so to say, just to maybe reset yourself a little bit. But with that said, I also want to show you that it's possible that even if you don't play perfectly, even if you don't break the game and really utilize everything that you have to your opportunity, and even if you play badly like me and get hit a lot, you can still do a lot and still rank well. And I think that's the main takeaway from this. If you play relatively well so you don't get hit that much, if you explore your rooms, you don't even have to do everything necessarily in order to rank well. You just need to know where your points are coming from and where they're going and how you're spending them, and you try to maybe optimize and maximize a little bit of how fast you're going, and in the end that usually results in a relatively good score. So in this case, you can see that I got in the 58th place, which is for sure, I think, in the top 100, maybe a top 150 once the real pros start playing it, but you can see it's not that bad of a score, even though I missed boss rush, even though I had this crazy combination which managed to hit me a lot of times, even though it kind of messed up and I did find a forget me now, and because I had restock, I could have also used something like a blank card to break the game, so all the tools were there, so if you're just more wary of that, you can use those tools to maybe compensate for other bad plays that you might have, or maybe leaks that you have in your gameplay. But even with that said, I still managed to rank pretty well, and I feel like I didn't play necessarily that well, and I definitely didn't do everything I could have done to maximize my score in this one, but I had fun, and that's really what's important. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.